Well, let me introduce my panel this hour. With me in the studio, Danny Ayalon is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States and the former Israeli deputy foreign minister. Good evening to you, Danny.
Good to see you, Laura.
And we're joined from Manama tonight by Abdulla Aljunaid, Bahariani columnist and geopolitical analyst. Great to see you, Abdulla. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
Also with us, Clifford D. May is the founder and president of the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies, the FDD. Good to see you as well, Clifford. Thanks for being with us. And Clifford, I'll start with you, if I may. So Benjamin Netanyahu says it will take some time before the IDF goes into Rafah. Will the US continue to support Israel if it does? Because there are reports of a split in the Biden administration over whether or not to keep supplying military aid.
Well, it's very hard to predict anything, but so far the Biden administration does agree that Hamas must be eliminated. Now, part of what the Biden administration is saying is that surely this can be accomplished without a land assault in Rafah, or at least the Israelis should have a plan to get non-combatants out of the area. As I understand it, the Israelis are saying, yes, we'll have a plan to get non-combatants out of the area. We don't necessarily agree that there's a way to eliminate Hamas without a land assault in Rafah. We know that Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif and other perhaps Hamas senior leaders are in the tunnels with non-combatant human shields walking above them. Look, we can go into this a long way. I think that the Biden administration is trying very hard to show that it is very concerned for civilian casualties, but certainly has not yet said, okay, the Israelis must let Hamas live to fight, to kill, to rape, to torture, to take hostages another day. It hasn't come to that at this point, as far as I can tell.
All right, Abdulla Aljunaid, I mean, might it be a step too far for Israel's allies in the Arab world if the IDF goes into Rafah, where so many Gazans are seeking shelter?
I don't think it's a matter for the Israeli friends and allies in the region. It is a position of the whole world at the present time, including Israelis. They want this conflict to come to an end as soon as possible. The death toll stops among the Palestinians, also the release of the hostages, and to find a way forward. If we don't acknowledge that, and the Israeli government don't acknowledge that, it's going to be a very sad situation at the end.
All right, thanks, Abdulla. Danny Ayalon, I mean, is the international pressure on Israel just too much to bear? Might it not be able to go into Rafah?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, Israel will do what it needs to do for its security, has always been the case. I hope that, the international community is less important than just the one country, our friend and ally in the United States. Once we have the U.S. acquiescence and understanding, I think we can do a lot. Sometimes we can go even without them. But I would say, as much as there is criticism towards the government of Netanyahu, one thing is pretty much a consensus in Israel, that you have to finish the job. You have, and you cannot finish the job without actually clearing Rafah. And certainly when the Hamas is saying that they are planning many more 7th of October. So I think once there is a consensus, and Minister Gantz, when he was in Washington, he did not oppose the Netanyahu's position vis-a-vis the operation in Gaza. He may have different views about the day after, about the vision to the Middle East, but not when it comes to the military operation. So when there is a united front here, domestically in Israel, it is very hard, even for the United States, to put the pressure on us.
All right, Danny, for now, thank you very much. Well, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has just arrived in Saudi Arabia for his 6th visit to the region since the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Blinken will also visit Egypt and, after adding it to the tour at the last minute, Israel on Friday. Lynn Plachmeyer reports.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on his 6th tour of the Middle East since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. On Wednesday, he arrived in Saudi Arabia, after which he will travel to Egypt. Initially, the Secretary of State did not include Israel in his plans, but it's now been announced that he will visit Israel on Friday.
The purpose is multifold. It's, of course, to push for an agreement on a ceasefire and the release of hostages. As you know, we're intensely engaged on that. every single day, and we're doing everything we can to push that forward and to reach an agreement. But it is also to continue the conversations that we started back in January on exactly the question you raised, which is post-conflict Gaza.
Blinken's visit comes amid rising tensions between Israel and the United States. There has been a very public spat between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Joe Biden, who is seemingly growing frustrated with the Israeli leader's perceived unyielding position in this war. Netanyahu, on the other hand, is unhappy with the stance of the US and much of the rest of the international community.
To our friends in the international community, I say, is your memory so short? So quickly you forgot about October 7th, the worst massacre committed against the Jews since the Holocaust?
Biden and Netanyahu did speak on the phone this week, but they remain at odds, especially when it comes to the Rafah operation, which has caused concern within the international community.
I want you to know that I have already approved the IDF's operational plan, and soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones. President Biden, whose support I appreciate, asked to present to us the proposals of his people both in the humanitarian field and on other issues. And as I said, there were times we agreed with our friends, and there were times we did not agree with them. In the end, we always did what was essential for our safety, and we will do so this time as well.
With Blinken returning to Israel on Friday, hope remains that negotiators in Qatar can achieve a ceasefire, and the politicians will come up with day after the war plan by a strong, united Middle East. But for now, the solution is nowhere in sight.
So, Secretary of State Blinken in Saudi Arabia tonight. Abdulla, Aljunaid, what is the message that the Saudis will be hoping to press on Blinken as he spends his time in Saudi Arabia tonight?
I believe the consensus at the present time is to find a way out of this crisis. And if we follow what's coming out of the United States, including what Senator Schumer have said, that there should be a replacement to the current government in Israel. This is saying so much in terms of what the international community could say, or the Saudis, or the rest of the region could say.
You think the Saudis would like to see a change of leadership in Israel?
Listen, this is your business, not our business. So you elect whom you want, okay? But at the end of the day, definitely everybody would like to have somebody that the region could work with. But I don't, and sincerely, I would say that Netanyahu doesn't fit that caliber.
All right, Abdulla. Clifford, I mean, it's quite a bizarre turn of events for Antony Blinken to just add Israel to his tour at the last minute. What's that about?
Well, I would think he'd want to relate what his conversations in Saudi Arabia, and as long as he's in the neighborhood, it pays to stop in and have a conversation. But I want to suggest something else. If I were a Saudi, if I were the Saudi foreign minister and Blinken were coming to see me, I would say the following to him, very much off the record, not for him to reveal to anybody, and I wouldn't reveal it either. I'd say, look, I expect that you're going to support the Israelis as they try to defeat Hamas, which is a proxy of Iran. If you will not do that for Israel, then I'm not sure what I should expect of a defense guarantee from you to us, the Saudis, vis-a-vis Iran, which also threatens us quite as much as it threatens Israel. So I think the Saudis, and I don't think I expect them to say this publicly, do want Hamas defeated by Israel, because Hamas is both Muslim Brotherhood and a proxy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is a threat to the entire region, as we can see with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, with the Shia militias, all that. By the way, the day after in Gaza is very different if Hamas survives or if Hamas is defeated. And by defeated, I mean it has no military or governing capabilities left, which I think must be the Israeli aim, no matter how much pressure they get from the so-called international community.
Danny Ayalon, that's the dilemma for many Arab countries, isn't it? Anger from the Arab street and seeing the images coming from Gaza, coupled with an understanding that Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, is a threat to the region.
Oh, absolutely. You see the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, what they have been trying to do and what is the response of the regime. Of course, we see Hamas, which is part and parcel of the Muslim Brotherhood. We know that they are a challenge to all the Sunni regimes in the region. So absolutely, there is here a convergence of interest between Israel and the moderate Sunni countries. I think also the United States interest as all, peace-seeking countries would like to see or should see Hamas defeated. However, this is not the case with some of the public opinion among the populations, be it in Egypt or Jordan, where there is a significant, actually a majority of Palestinian population in Jordan. There is a stronghold of Hamas and the Islamic Brotherhood in Jordan. And also, unfortunately, we see the result of decades of incitement, Palestinian and others, against Israel, where you see now, even in the United States, the progressive element of the Democratic Party, the Muslims in America are very much pressing for a ceasefire and actually are siding with Hamas on this political warfare. And this is where the challenge of Israel is. And with the upcoming visit here in Israel of Secretary Blinken, quite honestly, it seems like the Americans are all over the board. And I do not see a clear path of, a precise foreign policy. Now meeting all these Arab countries talking about the future of the region, it's all well and done, but you have to think about the day after. You have to think what is going to happen in Gaza and how to reach a ceasefire. Right now, the bottleneck to everything else is the Hamas intransigence, their refusal to meet the the very, very basic, I would say, requests or demands of Israel. You must have a ceasefire, and you cannot have a ceasefire without the release of the hostages.
All right, Abdulla, Aljunaid, just to pick up on a couple of points there. I mean, is there a concern behind closed doors in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere that if Hamas is not defeated, absolutely, it will wreak havoc in the region, similar to what we're now seeing with the Houthis? They were not defeated by the Arab coalition, and they are now causing absolute chaos in the region.
I mean, Laura, I don't know what's happening here. The Israelis, including you and Danny. It's the first time for me to speak to Clifford or, across the camera here. But the region, I'm talking about our part of the world, have designated the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization back in 2013. Okay? We made that decision. We sorted that problem. Now you're trying to bring that issue back onto the table. The Muslim Brotherhood is your problem. Hamas is your problem. Why don't you ask the United States, Qatar, and Israel why Hamas was left being mandated, being supported, and being financed? It's not us. What we had to say was said and done back in 2013. Now, how are you going to do it if you want the region to engage Israel in terms of addressing the issue of the day after? You need to seriously stop bringing this issue of finishing Hamas, because Israel have already engaged in its longest war ever, and Hamas is still engaging the Israeli forces on the ground and, shooting its rockets every now and then. You need to take a step back and address it accordingly. If you want to take a look at the broader picture and the broad strategic landscape, we need to come to an understanding. Rafah, it's not going to be the end of your problem with Hamas. It's going to be your biggest problem ever, not just in Gaza, but the whole region and the world.
All right, thank you, Abdulla. Clifford, perhaps you'd like to respond to that.
Well, what I would say is that this conflict could end tomorrow. I remind people of that. If Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif would just come out of the tunnels, push aside the human shields they've been using, let the hostages be released, perhaps wave a small white flag, that would be over. But after what happened on 10/7, there is no way to go back to the previous policy. The previous policy on October 6th was a ceasefire. Gaza develops as it chooses, and the Israelis stay out. But stay out while providing electricity, while allowing thousands of Gazans to work in Israel, while providing a crossing for humanitarian aid. All of that was going on. What we didn't understand, what the Americans didn't understand, what the Europeans didn't, maybe still don't, is that essentially what we were saying to Hamas is, you don't need to worry about social services, about governing. The UN will take care of that with donor money from America and Europe. You need to worry about only one thing: how you're going to kill Israelis, how you're going to kill Jews, how you're going to pursue your mission of the extermination of the Jewish state next door, and what you need to do. So you can build hundreds of miles of tunnels. You can import from Egypt all the ammunition and all the weapons you need. You can do all that. If I were Hamas, I'd think, hey, these guys aren't stupid. They must understand what they're doing. They're encouraging us. They're supporting us. We will continue to do it. That policy was obviously a terrible failure. The new policy is this: that Hamas be destroyed in terms of its military and governing capabilities, and that people of Gaza get to speak freely about what Hamas has done to their lives, done to Gaza, done to the life they had, and that they don't want it again. But if Hamas is back in power, none of that happens. And so I think the Israelis have no choice, no matter what people who have given bad advice before, what advice they give in the future. I think the Israelis know that now. The Israelis were not smart about Gaza and Hamas over the past few years. They got complacent and they didn't understand what was going on. Now there's only one correction, and that's to finish the war that Hamas began. And Hamas is responsible for every single casualty, Palestinian and Israeli.
All right, thank you, Clifford. Danny, if you'd like to respond to that.
Oh, I totally agree with my good friend Clifford May, and this is indeed on the hands of Hamas. I maintained a long time ago, if Hamas wants to put an end to the misery of the Palestinians in Gaza, all they have to do is unconditionally surrender, and I'm sure the Israeli government would allow them a free exit out of Gaza, like they did in Beirut to Arafat in 1982. So it's basically in the hands of Hamas, but we see what is the tactic or strategy of Hamas is actually to bring about as much poverty and misery and hunger in Gaza so as to increase pressure on Israel.
Okay, Danny, thank you. Well, there is increasing international alarm over levels of food insecurity in Gaza, especially in the north of the Strip. Israel says aid agencies are responsible for the shortfall and rejects criticism that its screening procedures are slowing deliveries. Dikshi Arvind has this report.
Humanitarian aid agencies have enough available aid for the Gaza Strip, but the issue is delivering it. International governments like the United States, France, Germany, and Jordan have explored air and sea routes, but those options are not nearly as efficient as delivering on land.
Nothing justifies the abhorrent acts of Hamas on October 7, and nothing justifies the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Today, more than half of the population, over 1 million people, are facing catastrophic hunger, according to the scientific classification that was recently published. And so we must act now before it is too late.
Officials say that the United States is in talks with Qatar to build a temporary emergency pier in Gaza to facilitate the delivery process and to allow more aid to be sent in.
It must be possible to get more humanitarian aid to Gaza now, and that's what needs to be achieved now, in discussions with surrounding Arab countries, and it must happen with those countries, which can apply pressure on Hamas so that it happens now.
Israel has come under international scrutiny and has been accused of not allowing enough aid to enter the Strip. Israel counters that over the last few weeks, over 140 aid trucks on average have been able to enter.
Every day, 250 trucks that came here in Camp Shalom is sent to the Palestinian side, and you saw it in your own eyes. And on the Palestinian side, 300 trucks are waiting to be collected and distributed.
Israel has consistently maintained that there's absolutely no limit on the aid that goes into Gaza.
All right, well, Abdulla Aljunaid is with us. Abdulla, is Israel kind of falling into Hamas's trap here with the level of hardship that we're seeing in Gaza right now?
Well, put it this way, the present time, everybody trying to lend a hand. And it's going to be in the best interest of the whole world, I mean, for Israel to assist further or as much as possible. At the present time, we have 3 points of entry. North, south, and now through the Cyprus corridor. We need to make sure that the designated safe zones are protected or made safe by all means, and to find some sort of mechanism through the Gaza or through UNRWA, through any organization that makes sure that this food and supplies goes to the needies and to the people, and not to be finding itself through Hamas into a black market situation. And this is what is happening. What we need to make sure is to have, I mean, the UAE is there through its aid program and assistance. Why can't we ask them to play a bigger role in this? And because they have the expertise and they have the, the ability to do that, probably with the Egyptian. Probably we could bring in the PA.
Do you think Egypt could be doing more to ease the humanitarian situation?
Put it this way, I believe Blinken may be addressing that issue during his visit there. It's not just going to be limited to the ceasefire or the exchange of the release of hostages and other things. I mean, I assume that would be on the table.
All right. Abdulla Aljunaid, Clifford and Danny Ayalon, thank you all very much indeed. We're going to